Three 8-year-old girls visited their mother's grave, but one stranger changed everything. The sun had barely broken through the morning mist when three little girls, each with braids tied in matching purple ribbons, stepped carefully between rows of headstones. Their small hands clutched bouquets of wildflowers freshly picked from the meadow behind the foster home. Clara, the tallest, held a crumpled photo of a woman with kind eyes and a soft smile. "Mom would have liked these," she whispered, kneeling in front of the simple marble stone that read, "Emily Grace Monroe, beloved mother, forever in our hearts." Beside her, twins Lila and June knelt silently, placing their flowers at the base of the grave. They were only 8, but loss had aged their eyes. Their mother had died suddenly the previous year in a car accident, leaving them in the care of a distant aunt who barely knew how to love herself, much less 3 grieving children. Today was the first time they had been allowed to visit the cemetery since the funeral. "I miss her voice," June said quietly, brushing a finger along the engraved letters. "I remember when she used to sing to us at night, even when she was tired." "She used to hum the same lullaby," Clara added, looking at the sky as if the tune might float down from above. "The one about stars and dreams." Lila didn't speak. She stared at the grave, her lips pressed tight. Of the 3, she had cried the least but carried the deepest sorrow. She pulled her sketchpad from her backpack and began to draw, quick strokes forming the outline of a face that lived only in memory. A rustle came from the path behind them. None of the girls looked up at first, assuming it was the groundskeeper, but the footsteps were slow, deliberate, like someone unsure whether they belonged. Finally, Clara turned. A man stood a few paces away. Tall, thin, and dressed in a long coat despite the spring warmth, he held a single red rose in one hand. His eyes were locked on the headstone. The girls froze, instinctively leaning closer together. "I'm sorry," the man said, his voice gravelly with emotion. "I didn't mean to startle you." "You knew our mom?" Clara asked, standing slowly. The man's gaze softened as it shifted to them. He looked at each girl as if trying to absorb every detail, the shape of their eyes, the curve of their cheeks. "Yes," he said. "I knew Emily very well." June clutched Clara's arm. "Who are you?" The man hesitated. He knelt beside the grave, placing the rose gently next to their flowers. His hand lingered on the stone. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "I might be your father. Se quiser, posso continuar com o próximo bloco. É só digitar OK." The silence cracked like ice beneath the weight of his words. The girls stood frozen, unable to process what they had just heard. For a moment, the cemetery, with all its stillness and sorrow, held its breath. Lila was the first to move. She closed her sketchpad with a snap and stared at the man with cautious, questioning eyes. Clara's voice shook. "You're lying. Mom never talked about you." "I know," he replied, standing but keeping his distance. "She had her reasons. But I swear to you, I'm telling the truth." June hid slightly behind her sister, eyes darting between the man and the grave. "Why didn't you come before? Why weren't you there when she died?" He looked at the stone again, the pain deepening in his face. "Because I didn't know. I didn't know she was gone until last week. Someone from the hospital contacted an old friend of mine and they told me. I've been looking for you ever since." Clara's fists clenched. "We've been alone this whole time with Aunt Lydia. She doesn't even like us." "I would have come sooner if I had known," he said, taking a slow step closer. "Emily and I, we loved each other once. But something happened. A lie tore us apart, and I never knew she was pregnant. I didn't know about any of you." Lila looked at him, her expression unreadable. "A lie?" He nodded slowly. "Someone told her I had died. She believed it. I guess she never questioned it. Maybe she was trying to protect you." The air shifted around them, heavy with disbelief and old wounds. The girls exchanged glances, the world they knew beginning to tilt beneath their feet. Clara stepped forward, defiant. "What's your name?" "Daniel," he said. "Daniel Reed." Clara blinked, searching her memories. The name meant nothing. Their mother had never spoken of him. No photos, no letters, just an empty space in every bedtime story. You could be anyone, she said. I understand that, Daniel replied. That's why I brought this. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small worn journal. It was Emily's. She gave it to me the last time we saw each other, before she thought I was gone forever. There's a note inside, and pictures of us together. He held it out, but none of the girls moved to take it. Lila finally stepped forward, gently taking the journal from his hand. She opened it slowly, flipping past drawings and old handwriting until she found a photo. A younger Emily smiling, her arms around a man with familiar eyes. Lila turned the page to a folded note. She read the first line aloud. If you're reading this, Daniel, it means I've forgiven you. Clara's breath caught in her throat. June looked up at the man, her voice barely a whisper. Are you really our dad? Daniel knelt again, his knees pressing into the damp earth as he faced the three girls. His voice wavered with the weight of what he needed them to believe. I want to be. If you'll let me. Clara stared at the journal in Lila's hands, her mind racing through every memory of their mother. Could this be true? Had their mom really loved someone enough to write those words to save that photo? She wanted to trust him, to believe in the warmth in his eyes, but the fear of more heartbreak was a hard wall to climb. Lila handed the journal to Clara without a word. She kept her eyes on Daniel. If you're telling the truth, then why didn't you come find us when you heard about Mom? I tried, Daniel said, but the hospital wouldn't give me any information. They said her estate was handled by a relative, Lydia Monroe. I went to her house, but she wouldn't let me in. She slammed the door in my face. June's face tightened. Aunt Lydia hates visitors. She told us no one cared about us. She said our dad left us. Daniel nodded slowly. She told Emily I died. She told me Emily had moved on and didn't want anything to do with me. I believed her too, until I found Emily's letter in my things. I'd buried it for years, but when I read it again, I knew I had to find you. Clara turned the pages of the journal. There were drawings of the same lullaby they remembered, lyrics written in soft, careful handwriting. She traced the lines with her finger. She sang this to us all the time. Daniel smiled faintly. She sang it to me too, when I was sick. When she was pregnant with you girls, she said music was the only thing that calmed the storm. June tilted her head. What storm? Daniel looked into her eyes. The storm inside. The fear. The pain. The feeling that no one would ever stay. The girls said nothing, but a silent thread had begun to form between them. It wasn't trust, not yet, but something softer. A beginning. I don't expect you to believe me right away, Daniel said, standing slowly. But I'll come back tomorrow. Same time. If you want to talk, if you want to ask me anything, I'll answer anything. Clara nodded slightly, unsure of her own voice. Daniel turned to leave, but as he reached the edge of the path, he stopped. You look just like her, he said over his shoulder. All three of you, especially when you're angry. The girls stood by the grave long after he disappeared into the trees, the journal now open in Clara's hands, the silence filled with questions too big for their young hearts. Lila finally whispered, Do you think it's true? Clara looked up at the sky. I don't know, but I think Mom wanted us to find him. The next morning arrived with grey skies and the hush of wind moving through the cemetery trees. Clara, Lila, and June returned to their mother's grave, just as Daniel had promised to do. None of them spoke on the way there. Each was lost in a tangle of emotions, hope, suspicion, longing, all swirling beneath their small, quiet exteriors. Daniel was already waiting, standing by the grave in the same long coat, holding a thermos and 3 paper cups. He gave a tentative smile when he saw them. I brought cocoa, he said, setting it gently on the stone bench nearby. Thought it might make this less awkward. The girls sat, their eyes never leaving him. Clara spoke first. We read the rest of the journal. Daniel nodded. Then you know what we were, what she and I had. I never stopped loving her. Lila clutched the edge of the bench. She wrote about the day she found out she was pregnant, She said she tried to find you, but Aunt Lydia said you died." Daniel's hands tightened into fists at his sides. "I didn't even know Emily was back in town. Her father was sick. She left without telling me where she was going. Then Lydia came to my apartment and told me she'd died in childbirth. I believed her. I broke." June's small voice piped up. "So you never saw us? Not even when we were babies?" Daniel shook his head. "I didn't even know you existed." Clara's eyes narrowed. "But why would Aunt Lydia lie? Why would she keep us from you?" He looked down. "She never liked me. Thought I wasn't good enough for Emily. When Emily got pregnant, she told her family I was just some reckless musician who'd ruin her life. I think maybe she thought she was protecting Emily. Or maybe she just wanted control." "She got it," Clara muttered bitterly. Daniel's voice turned gentle. "I want to know you. I want to make up for what I missed, but only if you want that too." Lila looked at him. "Can we ask questions?" "Anything," Daniel said. June leaned forward. "Do you still play music?" A flicker of light came to his eyes. "Every day. I own a little record shop now. Back when your mum and I were together, we used to sing in bars, just the two of us. She had the voice of a dream." Clara looked down at her lap. "She stopped singing after the accident, after the baby, the one who didn't make it." Daniel's face paled. "There was a fourth?" Lila nodded slowly. "A boy. He was born too early. He didn't survive." Daniel closed his eyes, pain flickering across his features. "She never told me." The wind picked up, swirling leaves around them. The girls huddled together, the weight of memory pressing down. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Clara asked, "What was she like before all this, before we were born?" Daniel took a long breath as though pulling the memories from a place he hadn't touched in years. He sat down on the bench beside them, the thermos forgotten. "She was the kind of person who made silence feel safe. You didn't have to talk to feel understood. She'd sit with me for hours while I wrote music, sometimes humming along, sometimes just holding my hand." Clara leaned forward, hanging on every word. "She loved the ocean," Daniel continued, a smile slowly forming. "Used to say the sound of waves could mend a broken heart. We had this spot, a cliff overlooking the bay, just outside Willow Harbor. We'd sit there and dream about everything, names for future kids, little beach house plans. She even drew them out in this old sketchbook of hers." Lila perked up. "We have that sketchbook. She showed it to us once. There's a page with 3 names written in shells." Daniel's eyes shimmered. "Clara, Lila, June?" The girls nodded. Daniel looked overwhelmed, wiping at his eyes with the back of his hand. "I can't believe she kept those dreams alive, even after everything." "She said we were her stars," June whispered. "Even when it was hard." Daniel swallowed hard. "You were. You are. And I want to be the father she wanted you to have." Silence fell again, not heavy this time, but thoughtful. The girls exchanged glances. A decision hung between them, fragile, important. Clara finally stood, crossing her arms. "If you want to be our dad, you'll have to prove it." Daniel stood as well. "I will." "Take us to that cliff," she said. "The place you used to dream together. Show us it's real." Daniel blinked. "It's a long drive." "We don't care," Lila said. "We want to go." June nodded. "We want to see where it all started." A flicker of disbelief, and then a deep, genuine smile spread across Daniel's face. "All right, tomorrow. I'll pick you up right after breakfast." As the girls turned to leave, Clara lingered a moment. She looked back at Daniel. "One more thing." "Yes?" "Don't lie to us. Ever. Not even to protect us." "I won't," Daniel said solemnly. "You deserve the truth. Always." They left the cemetery together, the girls whispering between themselves, the journal clutched tight in Clara's hand. As they disappeared into the trees, Daniel stayed behind, standing at Emily's grave. "I found them," he whispered, "and they're just like you." He didn't notice the figure watching from a distance, hidden behind the old willow tree. A woman with sharp eyes and a cold expression. Aunt Lydia. Her fingers curled around a phone, her lips pressed into a thin, bitter line, and she had no intention of letting Daniel take them away. The next morning broke with a golden light spilling across the hills, casting a warmth that felt almost like hope. Clara, Lila, and June sat on the front steps of their foster home, with small backpacks slung over their shoulders, their eyes fixed on the road. Inside, Aunt Lydia moved about the kitchen with loud clatters, each sound sharp and deliberate, as if reminding them she still held the reins. Daniel's car rolled up just after 8. It was an old silver Volvo, its paint faded but clean, like something reliable from another life. The girls stood in unison, but before they could descend the stairs, Aunt Lydia appeared at the door. "Where do you think you're going?" Her voice was calm, but edged with threat. Clara turned, her chin lifted. "He's taking us to see where Mum used to go, just for the day." Lydia's eyes narrowed. "You're not going anywhere with that man. He's a stranger." "He's our dad," Lila said, surprising everyone, including herself. Lydia stepped forward. "Emily never mentioned him because he wasn't part of her life. He abandoned her." "That's not true," Clara said, holding up the journal like a shield. "She wrote it all down. She thought he was dead. You told her that." The color drained slightly from Lydia's face, but she recovered quickly. "You're children. You don't understand the things adults do to protect each other." "Lying isn't protection," Clara snapped. "It's control." Daniel had stepped out of the car by now, walking slowly toward them. "I'm not here to fight," he said, addressing Lydia calmly. "Just to take them for a day, if they want to go." Lydia looked at the girls, but her eyes were on Clara. For a moment, a flicker of something, uncertainty, regret, maybe even fear, passed through her expression. Then she stepped back. "Fine," she said coldly, "but they're back before sundown, or I call the police." Clara led the charge down the steps, her sisters right behind her. Daniel opened the car doors, helping each girl in like it was the most sacred task he'd ever been given. As the Volvo pulled away, Lydia watched from the porch, her arms folded tight across her chest. Her jaw clenched as she turned and walked inside. In the car, the girls were quiet at first, watching the trees blur past the windows. Then June asked, "What's it like, the cliff?" Daniel smiled softly. "It's where your mother told me she was pregnant, where we picked your names. It's the place I go when I miss her most." Lila glanced back toward town. "Will we be safe there?" Daniel met her gaze in the rearview mirror. "I promise you, you will." But none of them saw the second car pulling out a few blocks behind them, following at a distance, driven by Aunt Lydia. The road curved through hillsides dressed in spring green, with bursts of wildflowers pushing through cracked asphalt at the shoulder. As Daniel drove, he shared stories, small, intimate moments that painted their mother not as the grieving woman they remembered, but as the vibrant girl who once danced barefoot in the rain. "She used to sing to strangers in the park," he said, glancing at the girls through the rearview mirror. "Not for money, just for the joy of it. She'd smile at people who looked lost, and suddenly they'd stop to listen. That was her power." The car grew quiet again. Then Clara asked the question that had been gnawing at her since the day before. "Why didn't you fight for her? If you loved her that much?" Daniel's hands tightened briefly on the wheel. "Because I was weak and scared. When Lydia told me Emily had died, I didn't question it. I shut down. I left town. I let myself believe I didn't deserve the life we'd planned." June's voice was soft. "But you came back." Daniel nodded. "When I found her letter again, it was like she was speaking to me across time, asking me to try. For you." Lila turned toward the window, pressing her fingers to the glass. "Mom was strong. Even when she cried at night, she'd still kiss us good morning with a smile." "I know," Daniel whispered. "She was stronger than all of us." The coastline came into view, a vast blue stretch glittering under the rising sun. Daniel took a small turnoff that wound through pine trees and led to a narrow parking area surrounded by tall grass. The air smelled of salt and something ancient, like time had worn its edges smooth. They climbed a short trail that opened suddenly onto a cliffside. Below, waves crashed against the rocks, and seabirds wheeled in the wind. Clara stepped forward, her breath catching in her throat. There, nestled into the cliff's edge, was a bench, weather-worn and carved with initials E+D. Next to it, a small stone marker embedded in the ground. Lila crouched beside it, brushing off the moss. "She made this?" she asked. Daniel knelt beside her. "We did, the day she told me about you three. She said, 'Let's make this our place forever.'" June ran her fingers across the initials. "You really did love her." "With everything I had," Daniel said, his voice rough. They sat together on the bench, the wind lifting their hair, silence stretching in the most peaceful way. Daniel pulled out a small leather-bound notebook from his coat. "Your mom and I wrote songs here. This one we never finished. I was hoping maybe you'd help me." He handed it to Clara, who opened it to see scrawled lyrics and unfinished verses. She smiled faintly, then began to hum the lullaby their mother had sung. Daniel joined in, his voice blending softly. For a moment, it felt like Emily was with them, carried on the wind. But deep in the woods behind the cliff, hidden behind a tree, Lydia watched them through binoculars. Her face was unreadable, until she pulled out her phone and made a call. "We have a problem," she said. The sun arced higher in the sky, casting warm gold light across the cliffs as Daniel and the girls lingered in the sacred silence of memory. They sang fragments of the lullaby again, each voice tentative at first, then stronger, more sure. Even Lila, who rarely sang, let a few notes slip past her lips, her eyes fixed on the horizon. After a while, Daniel stood and stretched. "You want to see the cave?" The girls perked up. "Cave?" June asked. "There's a little one down by the rocks," Daniel explained. "Your mum used to bring candles and write poetry there. Said it was her secret chapel." He led them down a narrow path that snaked along the cliff, careful to keep them away from the edge. The descent was steep, and they held hands to balance themselves. At the bottom, partially hidden by a thick cluster of ferns, was a hollow in the stone, just big enough for 4 people to sit inside. Inside the cave, the air was cool and smelled faintly of salt and moss. Clara found old candle wax drippings on a flat stone. "She really was here," she whispered. Daniel nodded. This place helped her breathe when things got heavy. June nestled beside him. "Can we come here again, maybe bring flowers next time?" "As often as you want," he said, ruffling her hair. For a long while, they simply sat. No more questions, no more confessions. Just the sound of waves and wind, and their breathing in rhythm with the sea. It was the kind of peace they hadn't known in months. Back up on the cliff, the forest shadows shifted. Lydia crouched in the underbrush, phone still clutched in her hand. The voice on the other end had been brief, emotionless. "Send the location," it had said. "We'll handle it." She watched the girls laugh, huddled close to Daniel, and her mouth tightened. Her mind clung to every reason she'd given herself over the years, that she'd protected them, shielded them from disappointment, saved them from the chaos of Daniel's life. But now, watching this scene, something inside her twisted. Was it doubt? Or something darker? Jealousy? Back in the cave, Clara held the songbook open again. "This part doesn't rhyme," she said. Daniel chuckled. "Your mum always said life didn't rhyme either. She liked it messy." The girls laughed. Lila reached into her backpack and pulled out a pencil. "Then, let's keep it messy," she said, writing in the margins beside her mother's notes. They stayed until the tide began to rise, then climbed slowly back to the top, brushing sand and salt from their clothes. Daniel helped them back into the car and glanced at the sky. "We'll get lunch on the way home," he said. "How you girls like grilled cheese?" All 3 nodded eagerly. But as they pulled out of the hidden parking spot, they didn't notice the dark SUV waiting in the trees a mile down the road. Its engine started quietly, and it turned to follow them, close, but not too close. Inside, 2 men in gray suits stared ahead, emotionless. "She said, 'Don't let them out of your sight,'" the driver muttered. The drive back into town was filled with warmth and quiet laughter. The girls talked over each other, excitedly recounting parts of the day as if trying to memorize them forever. Daniel listened, occasionally chiming in with a joke or memory, his heart fuller than it had been in years. The soft sunlight filtered through the windows, catching in their hair, and for a few fleeting miles they looked like the family they might have been all along. They stopped at a roadside diner, the Bluebird Cafe, a place Daniel said Emily used to love. The booths were worn, the tabletops etched with the names of generations. A waitress with bright pink nails and tired eyes brought them grilled cheese and milkshakes, smiling at the girls as if she recognized something familiar. "You Daniel's girls?" she asked, her voice kind. Clara hesitated. Then she said, "We might be." The waitress chuckled. "You got her eyes, all three of you. Emily's were unforgettable." As they ate, Daniel leaned across the table. "I want to ask you something. I know this is sudden, but how would you feel about spending the weekend at my place? No pressure. Just movies, pancakes, whatever you like. I want you to see where I live." June's eyes lit up. "You mean like a sleepover?" Lila tilted her head. "Would we have to ask Aunt Lydia?" Clara bit her lip. "She'll say no." Daniel sighed. "Then maybe I should talk to her, properly." "Don't," Lila said quickly. "She'll twist it. She always does." Clara looked up. "Maybe we don't tell her." "Just for one night." Daniel hesitated. "I don't want to get you in trouble." "We're already in trouble," Clara muttered, "just for being born." They finished lunch, and Daniel paid the check. As they stepped back into the sun, he took a photo of the three of them beneath the cafe sign. "For memories," he said, "in case this is all I ever get." But the moment was pierced by the low hum of an approaching engine. The same black SUV that had followed them now parked across the street. The windows were tinted and no one stepped out. Daniel stiffened. "Get in the car," he said quietly. The girls sensed the shift in his voice. They obeyed, slipping into their seats as Daniel kept his eyes locked on the SUV. As they pulled away, the black vehicle waited a beat, then slowly followed. Clara looked over her shoulder. "They're behind us again." Daniel's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. "I noticed." "Who is it?" Lila asked. "I don't know," he said, voice low. "But I have a feeling it has something to do with Lydia." June clutched his arm. "What are we going to do?" Daniel's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. "We're not going home. Not yet." He turned off the main road, heading toward the forest trails that lined the edge of town. The SUV followed, keeping its distance but never dropping back completely. In the back seat, Clara whispered, "What if she's trying to take us away again?" Daniel veered off the paved road and onto a gravel path shrouded by trees. Branches scraped against the sides of the car as he drove deeper into the forest, the thick canopy above swallowing the sunlight. The black SUV hesitated at the entrance but followed, its tires crunching softly behind them. "Are we safe?" June asked, her voice barely audible. "For now," Daniel replied, eyes fixed ahead. "There's an old ranger station up here. Abandoned, but I used to go there to write when I needed quiet. No one else knows about it." The girls clung to each other in the back seat, the warmth of the cafe already feeling like a distant dream. After several tense minutes, Daniel pulled the car into a clearing where a small weathered cabin stood, its roof slanted with time and moss creeping up its walls. He parked behind a cluster of thick pines concealing the car from the road. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's go inside just until we figure out what's going on." They moved quickly, Daniel unlocking the heavy door with a rusted key he kept on a chain around his neck. The inside was dusty but dry. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and there were two cots and a table scattered with old papers. Daniel lit a few candles, casting soft, flickering light across the room. Clara paced. "We should call someone." Daniel nodded. "But not from here. No signal." "We'll have to wait." Outside, the SUV had stopped at the edge of the woods. The two men inside watched, waiting. The driver pulled out his phone and spoke a single sentence into the receiver. "We've located the target, awaiting confirmation." Back in the cabin, Lila found a small wooden box under one of the cots. Inside were faded photographs, Emily and Daniel laughing on the cliff, younger and so alive. She held one up. "You kept all of this?" "Every piece," Daniel said. "It's all I had left of her." June curled up on the cot, her eyes drooping. "I don't want to go back to Aunt Lydia." "You won't," Daniel promised. "Not if I can help it." Clara turned to him. "You said you'd answer anything, so tell us the truth. If she tries to take us, what can you do?" Daniel knelt beside her. "I've already contacted a lawyer, filed a petition for guardianship. I just need to prove I'm your father, that I can care for you." "You think she'll let that happen?" Clara asked, her voice sharp. Daniel looked away. "She doesn't get to decide everything." Suddenly, a faint crunch of gravel echoed from outside. Daniel moved to the window and peeked through the curtain. The SUV had entered the clearing. One of the men stepped out, his suit jacket too pristine for the woods, his expression unreadable. Daniel backed away from the window. "They found us." Daniel signaled the girls to stay quiet, his voice a strained whisper. "Don't open the door no matter what happens." The cabin, with all its memories and worn wooden beams, suddenly felt like a fragile fortress. Clara pulled June behind a chair, while Lila grabbed the small box of photographs and clutched it to her chest. The sound of the man's shoes crunching on leaves grew louder, deliberate, until a firm knock echoed through the door. "Mr. Reed?" a voice called. Calm, measured, too calm. Daniel moved cautiously toward the door, not opening it. "Who are you?" "My name is Carl Donovan. I work with Child Protective Services. We've received a report regarding your unauthorized custody of 3 minors." Daniel stiffened. "I'm their father." "That's yet to be verified," Carl replied smoothly. "Their legal guardian has expressed concern for their well-being. We need to take the girls into protective custody until the matter can be resolved in court." Clara's eyes widened in terror. "No!" Daniel turned away from the door, his mind racing. "You're not taking them." "Sir," Carl said, still calm, "this will go much easier for everyone if you cooperate. The girls are frightened. They need stability, not secrecy." Daniel's voice shook with fury. "They're terrified because of her. She lied to everyone. She kept them from me. She said Emily was dead." "Then come outside and we'll talk," Carl said. "No," Daniel snapped. "If this is real, show me a court order. Show me something signed." A pause. Then, "We don't have one. Yet." Lila whispered, "They're not really from CPS, are they?" Daniel turned to the girls. "You have to hide, now." He opened a trap door behind the fireplace, an old root cellar lined with shelves and dusty crates. "It's not much, but it'll keep you out of sight. Don't make a sound until I come for you." Clara hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll buy you time," Daniel said. "Go." Reluctantly, the girls climbed down, Daniel lowering the door just as another knock sounded, louder this time. He took a deep breath, opened the main cabin door slightly and stepped outside. Carl stood with another man, a heavier figure with a stern jaw and mirrored sunglasses. Both wore the same neutral suits, but their eyes were wrong, too sharp, too focused. "You shouldn't have run," Carl said. Daniel stepped onto the porch. "I didn't run. I protected my daughters." "They're not yours." "Not yet." Daniel narrowed his eyes. "Who sent you?" Carl's partner spoke for the first time. "You know who." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Lydia." Behind the cabin door, the girls huddled in the darkness, holding their breath. From above, they heard the sharp tones of voices, the tense rhythm of something about to snap. Then a thud, a scuffle, and Daniel's voice, low, urgent, "Get away from me," followed by silence. In the suffocating dark of the root cellar, the girls clung to each other, barely daring to breathe. Clara pressed her ear to the trapdoor, trying to catch any sound. Her heart thudded so loudly it seemed to fill the space. Above, the silence stretched long enough to feel unbearable. Then came the shuffle of feet. Something dragged across the wooden floor. A grunt, then a muffled voice. "We have him restrained," Carl muttered to someone unseen. "Search the cabin. If the girls are here, they're hiding." June's grip on Clara's arm tightened. "He's hurt," she whispered. Lila motioned for silence, pointing toward the vent shaft near the cellar's corner. Rusted, narrow, but just wide enough for a small child. She crawled toward it, peeking through the broken slats. From that vantage, she could see part of the cabin's main room. One man stood by the fireplace, his back turned. Daniel was on the floor, wrists zip-tied, blood trickling from a cut on his brow. He was breathing, eyes open, but his face was pale. "They're not here," the second man muttered. "Just junk." "Old papers. We know he wouldn't bring them out here without a plan," Carl replied. "He's smarter than that. Check outside." Lila pulled back from the vent, panic rising. "They're going to find us." Clara's mind spun, grasping for options. She pointed to the shelves. "We pile stuff over the trapdoor, make it look like it's never been opened." The three worked in silence, shifting crates and heavy jars. Every thud made them flinch. June found an old blanket and tucked it over the trapdoor's seams, masking the edges. Then they pressed into the farthest corner of the cellar, behind a stack of firewood. Above, the cabin creaked as the men moved about. Carl's voice came again. "Maybe he left them somewhere else. You think he has help?" "Unlikely. He's been off the grid too long." A pause. "We take him to the safe house. Wait until the legal angle clears. If the girls show up, we collect them." Daniel's voice, rough and defiant, broke through. "You're kidnapping them. You think I won't find a way back?" Carl responded with eerie calm. "You're not going anywhere until Lydia says so." More shuffling, then the door creaked open. The sounds of boots outside, the crunch of gravel, and then another silence. Longer. Emptier. Clara waited, breath trapped in her chest, until even the birds outside seemed to stop singing. Finally, she cracked the trapdoor just enough to peek through. The cabin was empty. Daniel was gone. She opened the door wider and the girls crawled out, blinking against the dim light. "He let them take him," June whispered, stunned. "To protect us," Clara said, her voice thick with fury. Lila stepped toward the doorway, looking out into the woods. "We have to do something." "We're 8, June said. Clara's jaw set. "Then we're 8-year-olds with a mission." Lila turned to her. "Where do we go?" Clara looked at the journal still clutched in her hand. She opened it to the page with the emergency contact, an old friend of Emily's, a name she remembered hearing once in a hushed conversation. "We find her," Clara said. "Mom's friend. She'll know what to do." And from behind the trees, a figure stepped into view. Not Carl, not the man in sunglasses. A woman, not Lydia. Someone else. Watching. Waiting. The woman stepped into the clearing, her boots quiet on the moss-covered ground. She looked to be in her mid-40s, with short copper-brown hair and a deep scar along her left cheekbone. A faded denim jacket hung loose on her shoulders, and a leather satchel was slung across her back. Clara stepped protectively in front of her sisters. "Who are you?" The woman raised her hands slowly. "I'm not here to hurt you. My name is Mara." Her eyes softened as she looked at them. "I was Emily's best friend. She told me everything." Clara's eyes narrowed. "Then why are you just showing up now?" "I've been watching. Ever since Lydia tried to bury the truth, I never trusted her. Emily left me instructions in case something happened to her. I didn't think I'd have to use them." Lila stepped forward. "Did you know our dad?" Mara nodded. "Before everything went wrong. He loved your mother more than anyone I've ever seen. When Lydia told us he'd died, I believed it. But something always felt off." June's eyes filled with tears. "They took him. They said they were from CPS, but they weren't." Mara's expression darkened. "Lydia's reaching deep. She's trying to lock this down before the courts can catch up. If they've taken him, they'll move fast." Clara held out the journal. "This says you'd help us if anything ever happened." Mara took it gently, flipping to a page marked with a ribbon. Her eyes scanned the familiar handwriting. She even left a map. She looked up at the girls, fire igniting behind her calm. "All right. We're not running anymore. We're going to expose her." "How?" Lila asked. "I have connections," Mara said. "People Emily trusted, lawyers, reporters. But first, we need to get to a safe place. Somewhere Lydia can't find you." June frowned. "We can't just leave." Clara shook her head. "We have to. It's what Dad would want." He stayed behind so we could get out. Mara crouched, placing a steady hand on Clara's shoulder. He gave you time. We won't waste it. They packed quickly, grabbing only essentials: a flashlight, water bottles, the songbook, and a few photos. Mara led them through the woods, following a path barely visible to untrained eyes. As they walked, she told them about Emily, about the nights they spent dreaming of a better world, how Emily had feared Lydia but never let it show in front of the girls. She always said you three were her legacy, Mara said, the best parts of her soul. Clara's voice cracked. Then why did Lydia hate her so much? Mara hesitated. Because Emily made choices that Lydia never could. She chose love, she chose risk. And Lydia's entire life was built on control. They reached an old jeep, hidden beneath camouflage netting at the edge of a ravine. Mara brushed off the leaves, opened the back and helped the girls in. Clara looked out the window, back toward the direction of the cabin. What if they hurt him? Mara gripped the steering wheel. Then we make sure they regret it. As the jeep roared to life and sped down the hidden trail, none of them noticed the drone high above the treetops, its red light blinking silently as it tracked their path. They drove for nearly 2 hours, cutting through dense forest roads and backcountry paths that twisted like veins through the landscape. Mara never once stopped checking the rearview mirror. The girls sat quietly in the back, occasionally whispering to each other, eyes scanning the horizon for danger, for signs of being followed. At last, the trees opened to reveal a hidden farmhouse, old but sturdy, with ivy curling up the sides and a screened porch that creaked in the wind. It sat in the middle of a clearing, surrounded by wild grass and protected by nothing but distance and obscurity. This was my uncle's place, Mara said, guiding the jeep behind a collapsed barn to hide it from view. Off-grid, no power lines, no cell towers. Safe. She unlocked the door with a key hidden under a loose stone, ushering the girls inside. The house smelled of cedar and dust, the air cool and still. Inside, faded family portraits lined the walls, and a wood-burning stove sat dormant in the corner. Mara moved quickly, checking windows, flipping switches that didn't light anything. Generators out. We'll use lanterns. There's water from the well and enough canned food for weeks. Lila helped pull down blankets from a cabinet, while June explored the quiet rooms, each one filled with furniture from another era. Clara stayed close to Mara. What do we do now? She asked. Mara handed her a folded piece of paper. We call in a favor. The paper was a contact list, names and numbers, all handwritten by Emily. At the top, in case Lydia ever tries to take them, the first name was circled Julian Roth, investigative journalist, friend of Emily and Daniel, known for exposing high-level corruption. Mara lit an old oil lantern and found a satellite phone in a lockbox under the floorboards. It's risky using this, she said, but if anyone can shine a light on what Lydia's doing, it's Julian. She dialed. It rang once, then picked up. A raspy male voice answered. Yeah? This is Mara Sinclair, Emily Monroe's friend. A pause. Jesus, the man said. It's happening, isn't it? She's taken Daniel, sent men after the girls. We have them safe for now. I'll get a crew together, Julian said. Send me coordinates. I'll bring cameras. Lawyers too. We need proof, Mara said. Paper trails, medical records, guardianship claims. If Lydia's falsified anything... She has, Julian interrupted. We've been digging. There's something big. She's not just trying to keep the girls. She's hiding something. What? Another pause. She lied about Daniel's background, and she may have forged Emily's will. Mara looked at Clara, who had gone still. Get here. Fast. As she hung up, the girls gathered around her. What does that mean? Lila asked. Why would she do that? Mara knelt, meeting their eyes. Because this isn't just about family anymore, she said. It's about power and secrets, ones Lydia will do anything to keep buried. Outside, the wind picked up. And on a nearby hill, Lydia stood beside the drone operator, her eyes locked on the farmhouse. Found them, she said. Night fell over the farmhouse like a curtain of shadows, the only light inside coming from the soft flicker of oil lanterns. The girls sat curled on a worn couch under thick blankets, their faces dimly lit by the warm glow. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, and every creak of the floorboards felt heavier than the last. Mara moved with quiet urgency, preparing the house for what she feared was coming. She boarded up the side windows, checked the locks twice, and made sure her sat phone and files were safely hidden under a loose floor panel. Her movements were precise, practiced. She had clearly done this kind of thing before. Clara stood at the kitchen doorway, watching her. "You think she's coming tonight?" Mara nodded. "She knows where we are now. It's only a matter of time." "She won't stop," Clara said. "Not until she has us back, or until Dad is—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Mara crossed the room and crouched beside her. "We're not going to let her win, but I need your help." Clara blinked. "I'm just a kid." "You're not just anything," Mara said. "You're Emily's daughter, and you've already done more than most adults would have had the courage to." From the corner of the room, June spoke up. "What if she comes with more fake CPS people? What if they take all of us?" "We won't let them," Mara said, "and they won't be able to fake it anymore. Julian is bringing real officials, people who can force this into the light." Lila clutched the photo box. "Then we just have to hold on until he gets here." Mara nodded. "Exactly." Suddenly, a knock echoed through the house. Every heart in the room froze. It wasn't loud, just one solid knock on the front door. Then silence. Mara reached slowly for the hunting rifle propped behind the door. She motioned the girls to stay put and crept toward the front window, peering through a narrow crack in the boarded-up slats. No car, no footsteps, no movement. Another knock. This one slower, more deliberate. Clara grabbed her sisters and pulled them into the hallway just out of sight. Mara called out, "Who's there?" No answer. She unlocked the door, keeping the chain fastened, and opened it just enough to peer out. There, standing in the moonlight, was a boy, no more than 9 or 10, alone, shivering, dirt-streaked and wearing clothes a size too small. Mara's voice softened but stayed wary. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The boy looked up, his eyes wide and terrified. "My name is Caleb." Mara's breath hitched. "Emily Monroe was my mom too." Mara swung the door open wider, the rifle still in her hand, though lowered. "Come inside," she said quickly, ushering the boy in and closing the door behind him. The wind caught the edge of the entryway just before it shut, flaring the lantern light like a warning. Caleb stepped into the living room slowly, eyes wide as he took in the faces staring back at him. 3 girls who looked like him, mirrored in age and confusion. His gaze locked with Clara's and something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, or something deeper. I was told to find this place," he stammered. "A man told me you'd protect me, that you'd know what to do." Clara stepped forward, voice barely above a whisper. "Who told you that?" Caleb blinked. "He said his name was Daniel, said he was my dad." The air thickened. June gasped. Lila's jaw dropped. Clara took a shaky breath. "That's our dad, too." Mara sat down, rifle across her lap, as if she suddenly needed something to hold her to the earth. "Start from the beginning," she said gently. Caleb sat on the floor, knees pulled to his chest. "I was with a woman named Miss Lydia. She told me my mom died when I was a baby, that no one wanted me, that my dad was a liar, but I heard her talking on the phone last night. She said something about a cabin and sisters, and that he'd found them." He looked up at Clara. "I didn't know I had sisters." "You do," Clara said, her voice cracking. "You're our brother." Caleb nodded slowly. "I waited until she fell asleep. I took the truck keys. I crashed it, I think. I ran the rest of the way. I just kept going." Mara stood, pacing. If Lydia had him and knew about Caleb, she's been hiding more than lies. She's hiding a child. "She told us he died," June whispered. "Our mom said he was born early and didn't make it." "She must have told Emily he died," Mara said grimly. "Just like she told Daniel Emily had died. She's been manipulating everyone from the beginning." Clara knelt in front of Caleb, hands trembling. "Do you remember her, Mom?" He shook his head. "Just dreams, music, a soft voice. I didn't know if it was real." "It was," Clara said, tears slipping down her cheeks. "She sang to all of us the same lullaby." Lila took the songbook and opened it to the page with the unfinished lyrics. "She started this for you." Mara turned back to the sat phone and punched in the coordinates. "We call Julian again. We tell him Lydia faked a death certificate, hid a child. That's not just illegal, it's monstrous." In the distance, a howl echoed through the trees. Caleb looked toward the door. "She's coming, I know it." Mara gritted her teeth. "Then we hold the line." Clara looked at her sisters, then at the brother she never knew she had. She stepped into the center of the room, her voice clear. "We protect each other, no matter what." The farmhouse took on the air of a fortress as Mara moved swiftly to reinforce the doors. The girls helped her pull furniture in front of windows, stack crates under the sills, and gather supplies into a central pile. The air buzzed with urgency but not panic, something steadier fueled by resolve. Caleb stayed close to Clara. He watched her movements, her calm focus, the way she looked after her sisters. "You're the oldest?" he asked quietly. Clara nodded. "By 3 minutes." "I always thought I was alone," Caleb said. "I thought it was just me." "Not anymore," she replied. "You belong here." In the kitchen, Mara laid out a map on the table. "Julian says he's 3 hours out with a camera crew and 2 attorneys. If we can hold Lydia off until then, we can put everything in front of the court." "And if we can't?" Lila asked. "Then we go on the run," Mara said. "With hard evidence, we force them to listen." The lantern flickered, casting long shadows across the floor. Caleb wandered to the fireplace and picked up a frame from the mantel, an old photo of Emily holding a newborn in her arms, her eyes tired but bright. "Is this me?" he asked. Mara walked over, taking the frame gently. "Yes, she gave this to me the day after you were born. I thought she wanted it back, but she never came for it. I didn't know." "She thought I was dead," Caleb murmured. Mara nodded, her expression softening. "She mourned you every day." Outside, the wind picked up. The forest groaned and whispered secrets through the trees. Clara moved to the front window and peeked through a gap in the boards. 2 sets of headlights glowed faintly at the bottom of the hill. "They're here," she whispered. Everyone froze. Mara extinguished the lantern and moved the children to the back of the house. Clara helped June and Lila into the root cellar while Mara handed Caleb a flashlight. "Stay quiet, stay hidden." "What about you?" Caleb asked. Mara gave a tight smile. "I'm not hiding. I've been waiting a long time to finish what Emily started." As the children huddled below, the door creaked open. Mara stood in the dark, her rifle at her side. Lydia stepped into the entryway with 2 men, different from the ones at the cabin, larger, more official. Police badges flashed faintly in the dim light. "Step aside," Lydia said, her voice cold and brittle. "This is private property," Mara replied. "You're trespassing." "I have a warrant." "Then show it." One of the men reached into his coat. Mara's grip on the rifle tightened. From beneath the floor, Clara held Caleb's hand. And above them, the sounds of betrayal, law, and desperation collided in the silence between breaths. Mara took the paper the officer handed her, eyes scanning it quickly. Her jaw tightened. "This isn't a custody warrant. It's a search order for an unregistered minor. You're calling Caleb an abducted child." Lydia stepped closer, her presence like a shadow swallowing the room. "He was taken from my home." "He ran," Mara snapped, "after overhearing you confess to lying about his entire life. You've hidden him, isolated him, erased him from his own family. I gave him structure, stability. You fed him lies," Mara shot back. "You told his mother he died. Then you told him she never wanted him. You stole everything from him." The officer cleared his throat. "We're not here to debate. We're executing a lawful search." "And what happens if I say no?" Mara asked coolly. "We'll detain you. We'll search the house. And if we find those children, We'll place them in emergency state care until a judge decides otherwise." The air went still. Then Clara's voice rang out from under the floorboards. "Wait!" Mara's heart stopped. She turned sharply, just as the trapdoor opened and Clara climbed up, followed by Caleb, Lila, and June. The officer raised a hand, as if unsure whether to intervene. Clara walked past them all and stood between Mara and Lydia. "You want to take us? Go ahead. But you won't get away with it this time." "Clara, don't—" Mara started. "No," Clara said, her voice rising. "You said we weren't yours, that no one would ever come for us. But you were wrong. He came for us. Dad came for us." The officers looked at each other. Lydia's expression began to crack. Clara pointed at her. "This woman told our mother our father was dead. She told our father our mother was gone. Then she told all of us that our brother—" She turned to Caleb, her voice breaking. "Had died too." Lydia stepped forward. "You're confused, you're children." "I'm not confused," Clara snapped. "I remember. The night Mom cried for hours. The night you locked her in her room after she asked about her baby. You said she was grieving too much, but you were covering it up." Mara handed the framed photo of Emily and newborn Caleb to the nearest officer. "This is the boy she says never existed. Tell me, that looks like a lie." The second officer glanced at it, then at Caleb. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. Lydia's voice cracked. "You don't understand. Emily was fragile. She made mistakes. She would have ruined them." "No," Clara said quietly. "You did." A flash of headlights lit up the windows outside. A second car pulled into the driveway, then another. Mara smiled. "That'll be Julian," she said. Clara looked back at her sisters and brother. "Now it's your turn, Lydia," she whispered. "To be afraid." The tension broke like a dam as the front door creaked open, and Julian Roth stepped inside, flanked by a camera crew and a woman in a tailored suit who walked with the authority of someone accustomed to courtrooms. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, taking in the officers, Lydia, and the children. Julian wasted no time. "We're live in 10 seconds, he said, holding up a mic. "Mara, Clara, stick close." "Lydia, I suggest you keep your mouth shut unless you want to go viral for all the wrong reasons." The lawyer stepped forward, her badge already out. "I'm Rachel Lynn, family law attorney. I'm here representing the interests of the Monroe children and Daniel Reed. We have filed an emergency injunction to halt all custody transfers pending investigation of fraudulent guardianship, forgery of medical records, and child concealment." The officers shifted uncomfortably. One looked at the document Rachel handed over, his eyes widening. This changes everything." Lydia paled. "This is absurd. I've cared for them for years." "You've controlled them," Rachel corrected. "You manipulated a grieving mother, fabricated a stillbirth, and illegally claimed guardianship over a child presumed dead." The camera light switched on. Julian turned to face it. "We're reporting tonight from a remote farmhouse where 3 sisters and their long-lost brother have finally been reunited after a decade of deception. The woman at the center of it all, Lydia Monroe, now faces potential charges for obstruction, falsification of documents, and psychological abuse." The lens zoomed in on Lydia as she tried to step away, her face twisted with disbelief. "You can't do this. This is a family matter." Julian didn't blink. "It stopped being just a family matter when you buried the truth." The girls stepped beside Clara, each of them with their hands linked. Caleb stood a little straighter. He looked at the camera and said, "I didn't even know I had sisters until last night, and now I won't let them go." Rachel turned to the officers. "You are now under obligation to remove the children from Lydia Monroe's custody immediately. I've also filed for emergency guardianship transfer to Daniel Reed, pending a DNA confirmation that, I assure you, will come within days." One officer finally turned to Lydia. "Ma'am, you need to come with us. We'll be taking a formal statement downtown." Lydia's voice was barely a whisper. "They were mine. They were never yours," Mara said quietly. "You just couldn't stand that Emily got something you never could, real love." Lydia was escorted out, her shoulders slumped, a life of control unraveling thread by thread. Outside, the camera crew caught every moment. Inside, Julian pulled back the lens and focused on the kids. "You okay?" Clara nodded. "We are now." Rachel turned to them. "I've arranged a safe place for you tonight, with security. Daniel is being released into protective custody. He'll be here by morning." Caleb looked up. "He's okay." Rachel smiled. "Bruised, but alive. He wouldn't stop asking about you." For the first time in days, the children allowed themselves to breathe, and Clara whispered, "We're getting our family back." The farmhouse felt different now, no longer a hideout, but a sanctuary reclaimed. Mara moved through the rooms with the ease of someone who had been holding her breath for too long, her shoulders finally lowering. Outside, the press had begun to pull back, satisfied for now with their footage, while Lydia was driven away in the back of a patrol car, silent and pale against the flashing cameras. Clara sat at the kitchen table with Lila, June, and Caleb, each of them sipping cocoa brought in by one of Julian's crew. Rachel stood nearby, answering calls, coordinating next steps, but keeping her presence quiet and steady, like a lighthouse through a storm. "I can't believe it's really over," June said softly, her eyes still wide. "It's not," Clara replied, "but it started, the real part, the part where we get to live without hiding." Caleb looked around the room. "I've never had a home. Not like this." "You do now," Lila said, reaching for his hand. Rachel approached the table. "Daniel will be here just after sunrise. We arranged for a private escort and a secure medical check. He's bruised up, but strong." Clara felt a breath leave her chest she hadn't realized she was holding. "Does he know about Caleb?" Rachel smiled. "He does. He said he always felt like something was missing, like part of him never made it through the grief. When I told him, he cried." Caleb blinked, as if trying to imagine that kind of emotion directed at him. "I want to see him." "You will," Rachel promised. As the children got ready for bed in the farmhouse, each room now quiet, safe, filled with the scent of clean sheets and the soft rustle of wood and wind, Mara found Clara brushing her hair in front of a small mirror. "Your mother would be proud," Mara said, stepping inside. Clara met her eyes in the mirror. "She'd be angry too, at what Lydia did, at what we went through." "Anger can come later," Mara replied gently. "Right now, there's space for healing, for hope." Clara looked down at the journal in her lap, Emily's handwriting dancing across the page. "She wrote this lullaby. I want to finish it, for all of us." Mara knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Then start tonight, and sing it when he walks through that door." The night grew deeper, the wind settled, and then, just before dawn, a car pulled up quietly outside the farmhouse. Clara woke instantly, heart racing, and slipped from her bed. The others stirred too, and by the time they reached the door, he was there. Daniel, bruised, tired, but alive. The girls ran to him, arms wrapping around his waist, their tears silent but full of relief. Caleb hung back a moment, uncertain, trembling. Daniel saw him. He dropped to his knees, eyes wide. "Caleb?" His voice cracked. Caleb nodded. Daniel reached out, his hands shaking. The boy stepped forward, slow, then faster, until he crashed into his father's arms, sobbing. And Daniel whispered, holding him tight, "I never stopped loving you, not for a second." From the porch, Mara looked to the rising sun and whispered, "Welcome home." Weeks passed, and with them came a slow, steady transformation. What had begun as chaos and fear evolved into something softer, an unfolding of peace layered over the raw places still healing. The farmhouse, once a hideout in the woods, became a temporary home while legal matters were sorted. And through it all, the children and their father remained together. Clara sat on the porch steps each morning, with a pencil tucked behind her ear and Emily's journal on her lap. She added lyrics to the lullaby day by day, each line a tribute to what they had endured and what they were building together. Daniel watched from the kitchen window as she wrote, often humming the melody under her breath. He never interrupted, sensing the sacredness of her process. Inside, Lila took to sketching again, her drawings now filled with scenes of cliffs, waves, and laughter. June discovered an old record player in a corner of the attic and began collecting dusty vinyls, filling the evenings with music that echoed like memories. Caleb stuck close to Daniel in those early days, curious, hesitant, but soaking in every minute. They built a tree swing together, cooked pancakes that somehow always turned out slightly burnt, and spent hours talking on the porch about nothing and everything. Daniel showed them a box he had kept hidden for years, letters Emily had written but never sent, photos, ticket stubs from concerts they played together. Among them, Clara found a song Emily had started to write after learning she was pregnant. The title simply read, 4 Stars. She knew, Daniel said softly. Even if she couldn't prove it, she always felt Caleb was out there. Rachel visited frequently, keeping them updated on the legal process. The guardianship is secure, she confirmed one afternoon. Lydia's motions have all been denied. The courts reviewed everything. Your mother's journal, Caleb's medical records, the CPS impersonations. You're safe now. Truly. Mara remained close, often staying for dinner, sometimes sleeping in the guest room when the kids asked. She became a kind of aunt in their lives, a guardian of memories and a reminder that not all adults choose silence. Are we going to move? June asked one night as they roasted marshmallows outside. Daniel nodded slowly. Eventually. Somewhere near the ocean, maybe. Your mom always wanted that, but only when you're ready. Clara glanced at the others. We'll know when it's time. They sat in a circle, firelight flickering across their faces, their shadows dancing behind them. Lila pulled out her sketchpad and began to draw the moment. Caleb nudged Daniel. Can I call you Dad now? Daniel's voice caught. You always could. Clara turned the page in her journal and began to write again. This time, not about the past, but the future. About days filled with laughter instead of hiding. About truth being stronger than fear. And at the top of the page, she wrote the title that had been echoing in her heart since the graveyard. The 4 Who Came Back. The town watched their story unfold from a cautious distance, the echoes of scandal and heartbreak softening into something almost mythic. People whispered about the girl who stood up to her guardian, the boy who returned from the dead, and the man who never gave up on the family he didn't even know he had. The Monroe children became symbols of resilience and of justice finally served. The girls returned to school in the fall, escorted on their first day by Daniel and Mara. Clara wore a locket that had belonged to Emily, Lila carried her sketchpad, and June tucked the lyrics of the lullaby in her backpack, folded carefully. Caleb, placed in the same school as his sisters, stayed close to them in the hallways, always walking slightly to the side, eyes wide, heart open. Daniel waited outside each afternoon, always early, always with a warm smile and a car that now felt like their real home. They would pile in, voices overlapping as they recounted their day, and the drive back to the farmhouse became a ritual, one that ended in stories, snacks, and laughter that spilled out into the wild open air. Julian published the full story in a feature that went viral within hours. Titled The Grave, the Lie, and the Family That Fought Back, it recounted everything from Emily's heartbreak to Lydia's arrest. It included photos of the children, Clara with her arm around Caleb, Daniel at the piano with June on his lap, Lila showing her sketches of the cliff, and it ended with a single line. Sometimes the ones left behind don't stay lost forever. Letters poured in from across the country, messages of support, of shared stories of adoption, of reconnected families. One woman wrote, "My sister was taken from me when I was 6. Your story gave me the courage to look again." Another read, "I thought I was forgotten. Then I saw Caleb's face. The farmhouse mailbox overflowed. One afternoon, Clara found a package on the porch. Inside was a leather-bound book, blank pages, waiting. A note was tucked inside. For the next chapter, write it together. Mara." They used it that night. Clara wrote the opening line. "This time, we write the truth first." They filled it with moments, doodles by June, pressed flowers from a walk Caleb took with Daniel, lyrics and chords from songs they finished together, lists of favorite meals and dreams for the future. And at the back of the book, Clara wrote her mother a letter. "You gave us stars to follow and we found our way home." They decided to keep the farmhouse, to plant a garden in the back, to hang wind chimes from the porch, to paint the front door Emily's favorite color, soft ocean blue. Each night before bed, Daniel sang them the finished lullaby, the one Emily had started and Clara had completed. And in that song, their story lived on, not in loss, but in what was found. The day they visited the ocean for the first time as a complete family was one stitched into their lives like a tapestry. Daniel had waited until the court proceedings were fully closed, until Caleb's birth certificate was amended, until their new beginning was secure. Then he packed the car, picked a spot on the map, Willow Harbor, the place Emily had loved most, and drove them all to the edge of the world she had once dreamed of sharing. The beach was quiet that morning, with the tide just beginning to pull back, revealing smooth stones and sea glass. Clara stepped onto the sand first, holding the new family book in her hands. Lila followed, her camera slung around her neck. June and Caleb raced each other to the waterline, their laughter slicing through the sea wind like sunlight through fog. Daniel stood back for a moment, watching them all. Mara had come too, of course. She stayed near Daniel, her expression unreadable as she looked out over the waves. She would have brought them here herself if she'd had the chance. Daniel nodded, voice low. "She brought them here through us." The children found the old cliff path after lunch. It was overgrown, but still recognizable. Clara led them up the slope, their footsteps light but determined, until they reached the bench where it all began, weather-worn, initials still carved deep. E+D. They sat together, in silence. "I think Mom knew we'd come back someday," Clara said. "She left pieces of herself everywhere," Lila added, "and we're just picking them up." Daniel pulled out a tin box he'd carried with him. "Emily wanted her ashes scattered here. I never got the chance." Lydia refused the request. He opened the box gently. The wind seemed to hush. One by one they stepped to the edge of the cliff. Clara first, then Lila, then June and Caleb. Each of them said something small, just a word, a memory, a wish. And then Daniel released the ashes, letting them ride the breeze, float over the sea, join the air and the waves. Afterward, Clara placed the family book on the bench and opened it to the middle. She wrote, "Today we gave her back to the place she loved." And in doing so we found ourselves again. The wind turned, catching the pages, flipping them gently. Daniel looked at his children, his whole world now standing whole before him. "I lost so many years," he said, voice thick with emotion. Clara took his hand. "But you came back. And you found us," Lila whispered. Caleb looked up. "And you stayed." They sat until the sky turned orange with dusk, and the tide rolled in again. They didn't need to say anything more. The ocean sang for them. The seasons shifted gently, marking time not in calendars but in memories made and milestones met. Autumn settled over the farmhouse with golden leaves and brisk air, and for the first time in their lives, the Monroe children began to understand what stability truly felt like. Daniel started working part-time at a local music shop where he gave guitar lessons and helped organize weekend concerts. The girls often visited, sometimes sitting in the back room doing homework or sketching while he taught. Caleb began learning piano from him, his fingers small but determined, a natural ear for melody revealing itself quickly. Mara helped them convert the attic into a studio. Lila painted the walls a soft grey blue. June filled the shelves with music books and instruments they'd collected from garage sales and thrift shops. Clara mounted Emily's journal in a glass case on the wall, open to the lullaby's final page. Each Saturday they hosted what they called legacy nights. Neighbors, new friends, and those who'd followed their story would gather on the porch or around the fire pit. Daniel played guitar, Clara read from their family book, and Caleb, growing more confident, sometimes played his unfinished songs for the group. It wasn't perfect. There were nights of tears, of nightmares, of quiet longings for the years they'd lost, but those nights were met with arms that wrapped around each other tightly, with reassurances whispered into hair and hearts alike. The legal adoption of Caleb was finalized just before Thanksgiving. Judge Rawlins, the same one who had approved their custody, presided over the hearing. Daniel stood with his hands resting on the shoulders of all 4 children, his voice breaking slightly as he spoke. "I didn't get to see him born, but I get to raise him now, and I'll spend every day earning that right." After the judge signed the final order, Clara asked if she could read something she had written. The courtroom hushed as she stepped forward with her journal. "It's called The Lost Star," she said. "It's about a boy who was hidden from the sky, and the sisters who called his name until he came home." When she finished, even the clerks were wiping tears. Later that evening, back at the farmhouse, Daniel found a note tucked into his guitar case. It was in Emily's handwriting, one of the letters she had written but never sent. "If they find you, let them love you. Let them remind you that light can still find the cracks. You're not broken, Daniel, just waiting to shine again." He held the note to his chest and looked out over the porch where his children were laughing in the twilight. He had found the cracks, and through them the light poured in. Winter blanketed the farmhouse in white silence, turning the trees to sculptures and the fields to a sea of stillness. The children made snow angels in the yard, built forts and launched snowball ambushes on Daniel, who surrendered with dramatic flair, collapsing into the snow with a laugh that echoed across the hills. Inside, warmth filled every corner. Fires crackled in the hearth, mugs of hot cocoa steamed on the kitchen counter, and the smell of cinnamon seemed permanent. Clara took to writing poetry by the window. Lila painted snowy landscapes. June rehearsed a song she was composing with Caleb, who now played fluently, his touch confident, expressive. Their family book, now nearly full, sat on the coffee table, a living document of a life reclaimed. Each page was a layer of healing, each entry a vow never to be lost again. On Christmas morning, Daniel gathered them around the fireplace. They sat wrapped in blankets, the tree glowing softly beside them. "I have something for all of you," he said. He handed each of them a small box. Inside, each one found a star pendant, silver, delicate, with a tiny engraving on the back. Clara's read, "Courage." Lila's, "Vision." June's, "Joy." Caleb's, "Hope." "I didn't choose those words," Daniel said. "How your mom did. She wrote them in a letter I found. Said if we ever made it through, those were the gifts you'd bring into the world." Tears slipped down cheeks freely. No one tried to hide them. Daniel opened a 5th box. Inside was a pendant with one word: love. "I wear this for all of us," he said, "because that's what held us together, what brought us back." That evening, as snow began to fall again, they stood together on the cliff where it had all begun. This time not to mourn but to celebrate. Clara took the songbook and began to sing. The others joined her, their voices carrying into the night. Below, the ocean moved like breath, and above them the stars came out, bright, eternal, watching. When the song ended, Caleb looked up. "Can we stay like this forever?" Daniel smiled, his arms around them all. "Maybe not forever, but long enough to matter." Clara closed the book, her voice steady. "We weren't just found," she said. "We became a family." And as the wind swept across the cliff, they stood, together, whole and free, beneath the sky that had never stopped holding them.